Welcome into NHL Tonight. First shift for a Thursday, April the 3rd, 2025. EJ Raddick here in studio and on the road, my friend Dan Rosen in Washington, getting ready for the Capitals and Blackhawks on Friday night.
Yeah, and I was in Raleigh last night. Got here, obviously, this morning. Got the Blackhawks tomorrow. I'll be at the Island on Sunday. And Tom Galitti for NHL.com has been covering the whole thing, EJ. But I've jumped in here. So 892. Maybe we'll see 893 and 894. Maybe 895 against the Blackhawks.
Yes, it's possible. Certainly the Ovechkin chase continues, trying to chase down the all-time goals record held by Wayne Gretzky. Just 2 behind to tie, 3 to pass. And NHL Now will be there on Friday afternoon. We'll be broadcasting live. That'll be on Friday. And then Friday night, we've got the game right here on the NHL Network, the Chicago Blackhawks and the Washington Capitals. But before we dive into our NHL afternoon here, we got some big news, Dan. We got some big news because we are gonna have the Hobey hat trick finalist announced right here, right now on our air. They go to 10 and now they come down to 3. And so with no further ado, here are your finalists for the Hobey Hat Trick Award.
Zeev Buium, defenseman, University of Denver. Buium is just one of 2 defensemen to be named a top 10 finalist for the 2025 Hobey Baker Award. Now, in his second year at the University of Denver, Buium led all NCAA Blue Liners in assists during the regular season. Isaac Howard, forward, Michigan State University. Howard was named the Big Ten Player of the Year after tripling his goal total from last season. The junior was a conference scoring champion with 16 goals and 17 assists in 24 Big Ten contests. Ryan Leonard, forward, Boston College. First in the nation with 29 goals during the regular season, Leonard was named Player of the Year in Hockey East. The Amherst, Massachusetts native led his conference in points, game-winning goals, and shots.
So those are your Hobey Hat Trick finalists, the Hobey Baker Award finalists. And you can see there, Zeev Buium, Isaac Howard, Ryan Leonard. They have something in common. They all have a gold medal from the World Junior Championships. In fact, Buium and Leonard have 2. Isaac Howard was part of the team 2024, but 3 terrific candidates right there. And, Ryan Leonard already in the National Hockey League. I think Zeev Buium we might see after the Frozen Four. He, of course, University of Denver. He might be there, Dan, and Isaac Howard, a Tampa Bay Lightning draft pick. So curious to see what he decides to do moving forward. But 3 very, very highly talented young players.
Yeah. Well, I remember I talked to Stacey Roos from the Tampa Bay Lightning in their player development and about Isaac Howard. This was over the summer, and they basically were like, we want to see him go back to Michigan State and dominate, like be the best player there before we look to bring you here. And he obviously was 26 goals. So he did what he was asked to do. Ryan Leonard, I saw the guy last night. I mean, it was his second game, EJ. And, you watch him in his first game, and there was definitely, I think, nerves. Obviously, how could there not be a little trepidation? This guy, I mean, come on. I mean, he plays on Sunday and now signs on Monday, and now on Tuesday, he's dropped into Boston in the middle of this record chase, playing in Boston in TD Garden. So it's wild, but he looked pretty good against Carolina. It was, I wondered if he was going to play on a back-to-back after playing Sunday as well. But he played. He looked much better. He got about 15 minutes. He's got a mean streak to him. So he's going to be a player. There's no question about it. Maybe a little Kachuk in him, if you will. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. And Buium, look, the Wild could use all the help they get right now, right? So if Buium's ready to go, why not? Why not, if you're the Minnesota Wild, put this guy in? He's obviously got a lot of offensive flair to his game. So 3 good candidates there, no question about it.
No question about it. And, when Buium, if he does join the Minnesota Wild for the playoffs after he finishes at Denver this season, him and Faber on the blue line together for years to come, Dan, that's a nice duo.
It's a great duo. It's a dynamic duo, which
Yeah.
is what we really have not seen in Minnesota, right? I mean, you haven't seen a lot of that dynamic play there. You've got Kaprizov, obviously, but Faber looked so good at the Four Nations. Maybe hasn't looked as good since, but he was so good there, and he's going to be a player for a really long time. You know, part of that young defense that the U.S. is going to have for years, and Bouillon can fit right into.
So those are your Hobey finalists, Hobey hat trick finalists going for the Hobey Baker Award. That gets announced at the Frozen Four next week in St. Louis. So congratulations to all three for being finalists. And let's get to first things first, Dan. And Alex Ovechkin just keeps going.
Yeah.
It seems like he scores every game. Now, it wasn't a good night for the Washington Capitals, but nonetheless, Alex Ovechkin on the power play buries this one past Freddie Anderson. 892. You were there. What was it like in the building? I mean, because it was a nasty game as it went on, but the fans seemed to respond to Ovechkin scoring.
They are wherever he goes. It's just you have this feel of they understand they're seeing history, right? And you got to remember too. So Boston, it's not terribly far from Washington. They played there Tuesday. Carolina, not terribly far. Now they're home. They go to Long Island next. The UBS Arena, not terribly far. So you're getting a following of Capitals fans who are making these trips to go see. In fact, I was talking to somebody from the Hurricanes that they know a couple of season ticket holders, Carolina Hurricanes season ticket holders, that were like, if I sell my tickets for this game, it will pay for my first round. So like my first round tickets. So yeah. It's interesting, but they want to be there too. But I definitely noticed it. Like I just took a peek when I got there. I took a peek during warmups just below the press box and there were, in the first three rows that I saw, I counted at least 11, maybe 10 or 11 Ovechkin jerseys or T-shirts. And this is in Raleigh on a Wednesday night. So you obviously, you know that there's a following there. He hammered that one in. It was a great goal. Freddie Anderson told me after the game, like, have you really played in the NHL if you haven't given up one to Ovi? He's given up 10, by the way, in 13 games against Alex Ovechkin. But yeah, it's just, you know you're witnessing history, and there is an anticipation every time he's on the ice, particularly when they're on the power play, particularly when it's a 5-on-3.
So a nice crowd there in Raleigh. Did you get to the ice cream machine downstairs before the game or no?
You know, they did away with the ice cream machine. They've got, there's no ice cream machine. I know. Well, they still got the pulled pork. They still got the barbecue. But they did away with the ice cream machine. They do have ice cream. But it's you got to serve yourself. It's not the soft serve. It's not the same.
It's not the same. We can't have good things in this world. We just cannot have good things.
We want to have good things. They take them away from us. What
I know. It's wow. Well, anyway, Ovi now moves on. I mean, as we have to here. I'm very disappointed. I'm very disappointed about this whole thing. I'm going to have to talk to somebody down there in Carolina. They got to get that back. Let me ask you, you got the game now at home, right? The Blackhawks come in, and the Blackhawks, they had a good performance last night, losing. They had the lead against the Avalanche. They lose in a shootout, but they played very well, and you could see it right here. We are going to have the game on NHL Network at 7 Eastern. NHL Now will be there for the whole 2 hours before the game, live from the Capital One Arena. So if you want to follow this chase, tomorrow the time, get here early, 5 o'clock. Get here even earlier, 4 o'clock for first shift. Get you ready for NHL Now, bring you right into the game tomorrow night. And let's face it, like the Blackhawks, they're a team near the bottom. They do give up goals. Maybe tomorrow night could be the time. Yeah. On home ice, I think that, listen, there is a desire for the fans. They would love to have that happen in their building.
Well, they would. I mean, listen, even though we know that he can score a hat trick on any given night, it's still asking a lot for him to get a hat trick. You know, it is. Is it possible? Yeah, it's way more possible than people were talking about last night in Raleigh, of saying, well, maybe he scores 4. Okay, maybe, but a hat trick against the Blackhawks, certainly a lot more possible. You know, his next goal, too, he's got 39. His next goal will make him a 40-goal scorer for the 14th season. He already has that record. That's 13. This will be 14 for him. And if he does it within the next 2 games, he will either do it, if it's tomorrow night, he will score 894 or 895 in 1,486 games, Gretzky played 1,487. And obviously the Islanders game on Sunday would be 1,487. The difference is Gretzky didn't score a goal in his last 8 games that he played. So he actually got 894 in his 1,479th game. Ovechkin obviously didn't do that, but in total games, he could beat him.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating that the games played and the goals are almost identical. I mean, because Dan, the old school guys who, wanted Gretzky to kind of hold on to that record, they would say, well, how many games did Ovi play, thinking that he played many more games. Actuality, it's almost identical.
Almost, this is not like a goalie getting extra wins in a shootout when games were normally tied, right? I mean, this isn't that. This is, the games are just about identical, and the consistency. That's the thing to really marvel at here is the level of consistency. I think it's, I gotta be, maybe I'll be corrected. I think it's 19 30-goal seasons. It could be 14. We know it'll be 14 40-goal seasons. Like, that is incredible consistency. He's been available. Like, he missed the 16 games this season, but that was out of character for Alex Ovechkin. He's typically, one of the best skills a guy can have is availability, right? And he's available 95% of the time throughout his entire career. So it's really remarkable, the consistency, and it showed. I mean, Rod Brindamore brought this up too, which I thought was really interesting. And when I was asking him about Ovechkin yesterday morning, he said, I think this is what's happening now too, is the people who didn't get to live through Wayne Gretzky's career are getting a chance to really get an understanding through Ovechkin's chase of how good Gretzky was. Because remember, maybe the greatest stat is if he never scored a goal, he'd still have the most points in NHL history. And he has the most goals currently in NHL history. So they're getting to live it for the first time, or relive it, how good Gretzky was through this Ovechkin chase as well.
Well, you know what else was good was the Carolina Hurricanes in that game last night, because, good spot. The Washington Capitals playing on the second of a back-to-back. And the Capitals have struggled, to be quite honest, over the last several weeks. They're giving up more goals. The goaltending hasn't been as good. Their defensive play in their zone hasn't been as good. But that doesn't take anything away from the Canes. They came in there. They dominated right from the start, ended up winning 5-1 in a game that really got nasty, Dan, as it went along. But look at the Canes. Since March 1st, 12-3, scoring almost 3.5 goals, giving up just a shade more than 2 per game. Big goal differential, penalty kill is always good for the Carolina Hurricanes. And when you're watching there, you're in the building last night. What stood out to you about the Canes' performance?
Balance. It's the Rod Brindamore coach Carolina Hurricanes that you would expect. It's just a balanced attack all the way through the lineup. Seth Jarvis got his 30th goal, but there's no one player is standing out. I mean, I think their best player is a guy who's barely going to get noticed if he does things right, and that's Jacob Slavin, right? Like, he does so many good things, but he's not a flair guy. He's not an offensive guy, but he does so many good things, and he's out there all the time shutting guys down. But so it's the balance, and it's interesting because Brindamore brought this up too, like the difference, how good they've been since the Rantanen trade. It actually started just before that, as you put up the graphic there, since March 1st, because the trade was a week later. Yeah. But he said, and it wasn't a knock on Rantanen or anything. It was just kind of how that story developed. He goes, we're not about one guy. We're never about one guy. That's not who we are. And for that period of time, because of the interest and because of everything, it was more about one guy. And it made it difficult on them to play their style. And since that trade, they've been able to get back to who they are. I don't think a team in the league plays with a bigger chip on their shoulder than the Carolina Hurricanes do. It seems like they always feel like they have something to prove. Logan Stankoven's come in, and he's got goals in the last 2 games. He's been productive, taking on Tom Wilson last night. I'm not quite sure what he was thinking, but all right. You like the aggressiveness, the assertiveness. I don't know that it's the best route for him to go, but he did it anyway. All right. But like Jackson Blake's come on, and he's been playing better and scoring some goals for them. He went on a long streak where he didn't score goals, and Brindamore said he was surprised even though they didn't have a goal in that streak because of how well he was playing. But that shows that they have a lot of balance in their team. I think in their last, you go back to their last 14 or 15 games, I think Jarvis is the only guy that's a point per game guy for them in that stretch, but they're still got 51 goals in that stretch.
What do you make of the way the game turned nasty? I mean, we had that really ugly kind of play by Chatfield, kind of flipping McMichael there. He is not going to get any supplementary discipline for that. But the game got nasty. You pointed out Stan Coben getting his mixed up with Tom Wilson. I mean, that was not on my bingo card for that game for sure. But these are two teams very easily could meet in the second round of the playoffs in the Metropolitan Division Final. Both teams obviously have to win their first round matchups. You can see that flip right there.
Yeah,
I got to be honest. I thought they might give him a game just as a way to send a message around the league that type of play will not be accepted because, let's face it, guys get into scrums, they're grabbing, they're pulling at each other. I mean, if one guy is significantly, has a size advantage, and we saw that in that matchup, right?
Yeah.
I mean, McMichael's lucky. I think he could have been really hurt there. I thought he might get a game just as a way to send a message, like, don't do that. But nonetheless, no supplementary discipline. They play again next Thursday, and, that could get heated as well.
Yeah, there might have been a message. I don't know. There might have been a message through to the team, to Chatfield, about, hey, don't do that again.
But what's the message to the rest of the league? That's the thing. I think about when you suspend a player, even for a game, you have sent that message to everybody around the league that, hey, this is not an act that we can tolerate. So if it happens again, then we're going to suspend that guy. I don't know. That's just my thought on it, Dan. But I'm worried as you move forward. Not worried, but I guess I look forward to these things. I mean, next week they play again. Could get nasty again.
It could get nasty again. And to that point, to what you're saying, I don't think it's a play we see very often. I can't remember the last time I saw it. So I think it's pretty well aware, like, hey, we don't want to be doing that. I understand you send the message with a one-game suspension, but if it's something that we see repeatedly or, consistently within the game, I get it. But it's not something you see. I know the Capitals are not very happy about that. That's something I did hear that they, and of course, but there was another one. I forget who it was against. It's just drawing a blank on it right now. But Brandon Duhaime gave a little bit of an extra rabbit punch at the end of a pile too. That's not exactly something you want to see either. I'll tell you what, they're going to play it again next week. It's the team in Carolina that's clinched already. The Capitals will have locked up first. It might get nasty, but I would think that they're going to want to save it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. We'll see. And also, by the way, Ovechkin could still be going for the record at that point too.
That's right.
It's very possible that he is still going for the record at that point too, because they play Friday, they play Sunday, and then they play that game on Tuesday.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think what yesterday it wasn't so much that you're message sending for the playoffs because they're not meeting in the first round, but you do have that level of anticipation now of, hey, if Carolina can get past New Jersey, and if Washington beats whoever they play in the second wild card, whoever that might be, well, now we've got ourselves a very enticing, tasty little series there in the second round.
No question about it. Those two teams play on next Thursday, April the 10th. The Capitals have two games before that, as we mentioned. They play Chicago on Friday tomorrow, NHL Network. And then Sunday, they play the New York Islanders Sunday afternoon. I believe that one's going to be on TNT. And then Thursday against the Carolina Hurricanes. Let's get to some of the other things that went on last night. In particular, the Panthers and Leafs in an important game for that top spot in the Atlantic Division. And the Leafs, to me, Dan, this was kind of must-win territory for the Leafs for a number of reasons. First, it was the third meeting between the two teams, and Florida had won the first two. The Toronto Maple Leafs were rested. The Florida Panthers were not. They had played the night before, and in fact, they played 3 games in 4 days. And finally, Barkov was out of the lineup last night. They already were missing Tkachuk and Ekblad. So for me, the Leafs had to win this game, and they did. And you can see some of the notables out of the lineup, aside from the 3 that I mentioned. Kulikov, an important player, and also Sturm has been a really nice acquisition as a fourth-line player and a fourth-line center. So, they were missing a lot of players. The Leafs had to win this game, and they got it done. Marner was great. Nyes had a big play. They found a way to win.
Hey, you're missing a lot. What you're missing there in the Panthers lineup that wasn't in, a lot of sides, a lot of big bodies, a lot of banging around there. So, and the Leafs had to take advantage. They did. And listen, specific to that, I thought the same thing. I looked at the schedule. I'm like, well, they've got Florida coming in on a back-to-back. They're rested. You got to win that game. You want to finish first, you got to win that game. And then you look at again next week, they play them again, and it's going to be Florida coming in not on a back-to-back, but in the third game in 4 days. And the Leafs again will be a rested team. Got to win that game too, because that one I believe is in Florida, and then Toronto plays in Tampa the very next night. So you don't want to have a loss there than going into a back-to-back against Tampa, if I'm correct on the schedule. But no, I looked at it the same way, that it's must win. And listen, you got to be careful what you wish for, I guess, because if you're Toronto, like, yeah, we want to win the division, let's get that division wrapped up. And if it's Ottawa, now it's a Battle of Ontario in the first round, and all the pressure is, where it's in Toronto.
Yeah.
But you'd rather play Ottawa in the first round than have to face a team that either won the Stanley Cup last year or has recently been to the Stanley Cup final and won it, when you're still trying to figure out how to do that. You'd rather play the Ottawa Senators. I think it's very important that the Toronto Maple Leafs win the division, and getting a win last night was key for them. And I'll look at it the other way too, EJ. I think of those three teams, Toronto, Florida, and Tampa, I think Florida is the one that's most prone to a first-round loss in the playoffs. You don't know what Matthew Tkachuk's going to be coming back. Ekblad's going to miss the first couple of games, filling out his suspension. They've been banged up. They've played a ton of hockey over the last couple of years, more than anybody else. And I think it might be catching up to them. It could be catching up to them now.
Yeah, it could be catching up to them at the wrong time. We've seen that movie before. So the Leafs have now a 3-point lead over Tampa, who sits in second place, 4 over Florida. Tampa has the game in hand, which they will play tonight against the Ottawa Senators in Ottawa. So we'll see if Tampa wins. They close that gap again, and Tampa and the Leafs do play next week. So who knows? Out of all this, maybe Tampa is the horse that's coming down the stretch that steals it. I guess time will tell.
Yeah, they've won 4 in a row, so there you go.
All right. Coming up next on First Shift, Guy Gadowsky, the head coach of the Penn State Nittany Lions, going to their first ever Frozen Four. We'll talk to Guy next on First Shift.
Chris Serrano moves in, swung it back to Marcico, fires, scores! It's over! Penn State to the Frozen Four for the first time ever!
Wow! What a Sunday night in Allentown for Penn State. You can see this tweet from their hockey club, Frozen Four bound for the first time in the history of their Division I program. With that, we bring in their head coach, Guy Gadowsky. And Guy, you could probably watch that video over and over forever.
Yeah, I tell you what, it was a heck of a moment, and the Penn Staters came out and they were awesome. They were flying and they were buzzing, so it was a great atmosphere to do it in.
What do you, for you, like you left Princeton, you went to Penn State. I mean, they were going from club hockey to Division I. Terry Pegula, who owns the Buffalo Sabres, made a huge endowment. I think it was a $102 million commitment to the university to build the facility and to endow scholarships. But still, it's a little bit of a leap of faith for you. And here we are now. You're going to the Frozen Four. I mean, it's got to be some journey over the course of the last, 15 years or so.
True. The reason to go there wasn't exactly just to go to the Frozen Four. Certainly that's what Mr. Pegula had in mind. But the attractiveness was the great university and specifically the support they get in all their athletic programs. I mean, if you've ever been to a football game here, it's absolutely off the hook, as is wrestling, women's volleyball, you go on and on. So to be a part of that passion for a university and for their sports programs was something that I really wanted to be a part of.
When you think about the start and where things came from, I mean, was there a turning point in those first 4 or 5 years for you where it started to really turn the corner and you felt like, yeah, we're going in the right direction?
I mean, it wasn't necessarily a turning point, but it was something that when we became really comfortable with the philosophy that we were going to have. So it wasn't just get the players. There's a lot of players back then that they knew how great a university this was. They were like, oh my God, that would be sick. It'd be so fun, but I don't want to lose for 4 years.
Yeah.
And so we went from trying to get the best players to getting the players that really welcomed a challenge, guys that just love to be love to beat the big dogs, and that's what we got. Tommy Olczyk's a perfect example. Ricky Drost, James Wright, you can go on and on. But it was the philosophy to get guys that really welcome that challenge, not just to get the best players. That's when I think things really took off.
And, this season has kind of been an unusual season. It didn't start all that well for you guys, and then you kind of turned it around. I'm looking at the numbers. After, I think it was December 12th, you guys really took off. Was there a moment early in the year where guys, in that room came together and turned things around?
Well, I don't necessarily think it was one moment, but I definitely know what happened. It was shortly, you're right. I mean, in December 12th, at that point, we were 0-8. In league play and in the basement, obviously, and it could have been really easy for the guys to get negative. And a guy named Carson Dick, actually one of our captains, one of our leaders, stood up and just absolutely refused anyone to be negative. He just refused. Mm-hmm. And at that point, our women's volleyball team was on the run to win a national championship. And what happened to them was in the semifinals, they were down 2-0 and down in a game 22-16, games up to 25. Everybody left them for dead. Wow. And they came back, rallied to win that, won the national championship. And I remember our guys in the locker room having a really intelligent conversation about how the heck could they do that. So at the same time, Carson Dick was encouraging us to stick together and pull together. They watched our women's volleyball team do it in real time, and I think the realization that it can be done was very impactful.
Let me go back to Sunday night because, boy, that was a back-and-forth game with UConn. There were moments when it looked like you guys were in control. There were moments when it looked like UConn was in control. I know overtime hockey, sudden death with a chance to go to the Frozen Four. I mean, how hard was that heart beating on the bench? And what was the feel in your room and on your bench as that game was unfolding?
You know what? I think the feel was pretty good. Like I said, I think the leadership group did a lot of great work throughout the year in learning how to mentally control our emotions. And I think the bench was pretty good. But I tell you what, you get those Penn Staters buzzing in an arena like that. I mean, the intensity is up, the heart is jumping. And when this play was made by Charlie Serrato to Matt DiMarsico and it went in, I tell you what, it was a heck of a feeling and heck of an atmosphere.
Is it fitting maybe that DiMarsico is a Pennsylvania native? I know that, Terry Pegula had that in mind to grow it really at Penn State, but to grow hockey in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, you're 100% right, and that's a great point. I think Terry was thrilled that it was a Pennsylvania player, homegrown, that did it, because that's exactly right. His vision wasn't just to have a Division I hockey team. His vision was to really enhance hockey in Pennsylvania and our footprint. And I think he stated he would love for PA players to grow up, play at Penn State and play in the NHL. And so I'm sure he was really thrilled to see who got that one.
Now, a lot of our viewers here, they follow college hockey to some degree, mostly follow the National Hockey League. Give our viewers some of the idea. Who are the key guys for your team? I'm sure everybody's pulling that rope, so everybody's a part of it. But for the viewers who are going to now settle in and watch you guys in the Frozen Four, who are the guys that are the leaders on that team aside from your captain?
Well, sure. But first and foremost, I mean, it absolutely has been 100% team effort. And I mean that in the honest sense. And I think the guys that are most important in the team are the guys that are identity guys. And they certainly are going to recognize Dane Dowiak and Keaton Peters and Tyler Paget and Carson Dick and Nick DeGraves. I think some of the people that you're going to read about probably going to the Frozen Four, NHL draft choice, Aiden Fink is one of the leaders in the nation scoring. Another NHL draft choice, Arseny Sergeyev, our goaltender, is absolutely awesome and possibly the most lovable teammate in the history of hockey. And so those two guys are definitely going to shine. Our captain, Simon Mack, is just a great defenseman as well.
Tell me more about your goaltender, because it's such an interesting story that he was at UConn and then he finds himself in this spot with the ticket to the Frozen Four on the line. I'm sure that, there was a lot going on in his head, but boy, he made a lot of big saves in that game.
He was awesome, and it's not to the surprise of anybody in our team. He certainly had to be extremely mentally tough in that type of situation. He came through with flying colors, but it doesn't surprise anybody in our program because since the day he got here, he is the most competitive, lovable, just loves to compete, he's just an incredible person. And the fact that he competes so hard and loves to compete at everything, not just hockey, but at absolutely everything, he fit into our locker room perfectly. The guys fell in love with him right away. And I think he's just the perfect guy.
You know, you've coached a lot of teams. You go back, you coached Alaska Fairbanks, you went to Princeton, now you've been at Penn State for many years. You've had different experiences with different teams. You know, they all take on a little bit of a different character. This is obviously going to be a very special team for you because it's the first time going to the Frozen Four for the school and also for yourself. But when you think about the teams you've had over the years, why is this team a little different? Is it just that connectivity between these players?
You're right. I mean, anytime a program's first to the Frozen Four, that's something you will never forget and is special every time. I think this one is going to be a little more special specifically because of how it was done, and you mentioned it. We started out, hadn't won a game in nine conference starts, and we were left for dead, absolutely bottom of the barrel, dead last place. And for these guys to come back, and the way they had to do it was to stick together and really resist the temptation of being negative and pointing fingers. And they didn't. They really stuck together. They stayed positive, and it was amazing to watch and amazing to watch them take off. And I think regardless what happens in the Frozen Four, that life lesson is going to stick with me and all these players and everybody in this program, I think, forever.
All right, so Guy, next Thursday, you're off to St. Louis. You got the Frozen Four. Here's the schedule. DU, Denver is playing Western Michigan, and then a little bit later in the evening, Penn State and BU will be going head-to-head. The winners will meet, obviously, in the final game for the national title. Tell me a little bit about what you know about BU. I mean, Jay Pandolfo's been coaching that team. They've had a successful program for many, many years. Certainly, he has done a nice job there in his shorter tenure. What do you have to do to handle BU and really punch your ticket to that game Saturday night?
Well, correct. Jay's done an awesome job, and it's a program that is used to winning, and they've been very comfortable with the big stage. So it's something that we're going to have to battle. I think they're going to have the edge in terms of being familiar with the surroundings, and that's okay by us. But they're a great team. But you know what? It's the Frozen Four. All four teams are excellent. All four teams are hot. So you're never going to get a different opponent than that.
Guy, before I let you go, you've coached a long time. You played hockey. You grew up in the Edmonton area. You played college hockey. You've been coaching at different levels and then certainly NCAA level for many years now. What does this mean for you personally? I mean, the program, we know what that is, and it's a special moment. But what does it mean for you as that kid growing up, you know, playing hockey, loving hockey, and now to be a coach that's going to go to the Frozen Four?
You know, I'm honestly, I feel just blessed to be in the game. I really do. When you grow up loving hockey like everybody in Edmonton does, if you are fortunate enough to stay in the game in any capacity, I think that you're winning, and that's how I feel.
Well, it's certainly a special moment for the program and for you. We're excited for the Nittany Lions. We'll see how they make out against the Terriers. It's going to be a very, very exciting Thursday coming up next week. Good luck to you, Guy, and we'll see you moving forward here. It's going to be a big night, Thursday night.
Thank you very much.
All right, Guy Gadowsky, the head coach of the Penn State Nittany Lions, headed to their first ever Frozen Four. Coming up next, Dan Rosen will join us, the Super 16. Well, he's joining us for the Super 16. He's been here all day. But we'll see where the Blues land. That's coming up next on First Shift. It is time for the Super 16 presented by Enterprise. And Dan Rosen has put together his list. He has checked it twice. We'll find out if he's been naughty or nice. I'm going to say naughty because he usually is. But
we're in April. It's April.
Oh, who cares? It's always Christmas here on First Shift. All right, let's go. Get it going. 16 through 13.
All right, here we go. 16, you got the Minnesota Wild, 1 win in their past 6, but points in their past 2. They're struggling. Montreal, they won their last 2 against Florida. That was after losing 5 in a row, including 3 in regulation, but good wins against Florida. The Ottawa Senators lost their last 2, including 5-2 to Buffalo. Overall, they've been really good, 10-4-2 since March 1st. And the New Jersey Devils, they have been off since a win against Minnesota in the shootout, one against the last 2 against Minnesota. They won 3 of 4, but the other win was against Chicago, the loss to Winnipeg. So they're winning the games I think they should win.
All right, we're not gonna waste too much time. Montreal should be higher. It's obvious Montreal should be higher, but let's get to the next 4.
They lost 5 in a row. All right.
What have they done the last couple?
They lost their last 2, but you're gonna We're not quibbling. Okay. We're not quibbling over this.
Move on.
All right, let's go. The Florida Panthers are 12. They've lost 3 in a row. 2 of them to Montreal. Yeah, yell at me all you want. 8 goals in their past 4, 4-6-1 in their last 11. They are the Florida Panthers. The Edmonton Oilers, they won their past 2 games, being Calgary and Vegas, and 3-2 without McDavid. You got the LA Kings, who I could definitely see an argument to be higher because of how they've been playing. 11 wins in their last 14 games and some good wins. They did lose to Colorado and Toronto. Colorado in there at 9. Been solid, you know. I mean, the shootout win against the Hawks, beat the Flames. 13-2-2 though in their last 17 games for the Colorado Avalanche.
All right, so they're dropping like a stone according to you because you had them at 2 and now you have them at 9.
Well, you know what? Remember, I had them at 2. This was a couple weeks ago. We didn't do this last week, and they had lost a few games. But there are other teams now that have really come up. One of these teams you haven't seen yet that, you know, I mean, a couple weeks ago wasn't even on the radar.
Okay, let's go. Let's get to the top 8.
All right. Toronto Maple Leafs at number 8, EJ. They've won 3 straight and 7-9. Beat Florida, beat LA, beat Colorado. Tampa Bay Lightning, guess I like them just a little bit more. Won 4 straight, as we were talking about before. 7-2-1 in their last 10, and that's the team right there. The St. Louis Blues won 10 in a row. 41-14. They've outscored their opponents in that stretch. It's been a softer schedule for them, however, but they've won the games. The teams in a playoff spot that they've beaten in this 10-game stretch are Minnesota, Montreal, and Colorado. And the Washington Capitals have to drop 1 win in their last 5 games. The Hobey Chase, I bet you they wish it ends soon so they can get back to just focusing on the team.
You know, I'll just say quickly before we get to the top 4, because I want to see the whole mosaic play out here. But
it is,
you know, you've hated the St. Louis Blues all year. I mean, I'll go get the tape from early in the year when you wouldn't even have them in when they played well. I mean, look at this. Look at these numbers. This is since the Four Nations face-off. This isn't like the last week. I mean, so they'd won 10 in a row, first in record, first in point percentage, first in goals, second in goals against, and the power play 7th best in the National Hockey League. I mean, that's a pretty big sample size. I would think you'd have them higher, but let's just see what you got in the top 4, and then we can readdress this issue.
All right. The Vegas Golden Knights will be number 4 for me. They did lose to Edmonton. That ended a 6-game winning streak for them. They just continue to get it done. The Carolina Hurricanes, we've talked about the Hurricanes. They've been absolutely terrific since before the Rantanen trade, 12-2 since March 2nd. You've got the Winnipeg Jets. Now, the Jets lost to LA. They had won 3 straight before that. They've been, for the balance of the season, a top 2 team in the league. So they stay there for me. But Dallas goes to number 1. Yes, the Winnipeg Jets back on March 14th beat the Dallas Stars 4-1. Since then, the Stars have won. They have 6 straight wins now. They have points in 9 straight. And since then, the Jets 5 wins in 8 games. So Dallas jumps ahead of Winnipeg into that top spot.
Well, I mean, I think you could make a case that you could have had Dallas and Carolina and St. Louis. They've all been playing great, so you could have had all 3. They should really be the top 3 in whatever order you want. You might even have St. Louis as number 1 just because they've won 10 in a row, and I showed you the numbers for the last, couple of months, how good they've been. But listen, we'll put that to bed and we'll focus on the Stars and the Jets because it's really fascinating to watch. I've been back and forth. Can the Stars catch the Jets? Maybe not. Now they look close again. I mean, they're sitting there, Dan. They're 4 points behind. They have a game in hand, and these teams will play on April 10th, which is shaping up to be a pretty important day with some really important games next Thursday. So, it's going to be interesting to see if they can do it because, I mean, this could be disastrous for the Jets, who have been really good all year. Listen, it's a harder matchup against Colorado. We know that, and we know what Colorado did to Winnipeg last year. I think just the psyche of this, and Steve Cooley brought this up yesterday, and I happen to agree with him on this, for the Jets to lose that spot and then have to play Colorado again in the first round, boy, oh boy, I think that's, I just think they need to hold on to that spot, and it's not going to be easy.
I 100% agree with you, and I 100% agree with Steve Koulias, which is just shocking to me.
Shocking. We're all in agreement.
We are all in agreement, but you're right. The Jets, that would be a real tough thing mentally, to be the team that's been there since day one. Remember, they got off to that incredible start to the season. To be the team that's been there since day one, and then to not be playing poorly, but just to get caught. right, by Dallas. Like, they could definitely get caught. And then you end up potentially, if you're Winnipeg, you end up against Colorado, which you don't want to be in. And listen, right now, it's looking better for them for right now. Like, it looks like a Minnesota series for them right now. And man, you want to be there, even if Kaprizov's able to come back and Eriksson Ek's able to come back. And these guys, you want to be in that series. You don't want to be anywhere near Colorado in the first round. So that one, I 100% agree with you. I'll also throw this little thing out there. If St. Louis doesn't lose again, they may catch Colorado.
I guess that's possible. They have been playing some great hockey. There's no question about that. You look at the schedule tonight, it could get even tighter because the Jets are in Vegas taking on the Golden Knights, who, as you point out, is a really good team. And it looks like Comrie is going to get the start, not Hellebuck tonight for the Jets. So that is interesting in itself. And then the Dallas Stars are home for the Nashville Predators. And, I mean, let's face it, any of these teams could win on any given night. The Nashville Predators have shown on particular, they beat Toronto, I think it was a week 10 days ago now. But still, when you look at it, I mean, they're struggling to finish the season. Maybe the Stars win that game. Maybe the Jets lose tonight. Then it's 2 points with a game in hand and a matchup against one another. So that's going to be fun down the stretch to watch.
Absolutely, and it gets really tight. That's not what you want if you're Winnipeg. I understand the starting Comrie, though. I get it, because you're still building for the playoffs. You're not building for the end of the regular season. So you don't want to blow out Connor Hellebuck more than you have to in order to – you want to get to the playoffs with him being as fresh as possible. Because if you do drop, man, you're absolutely going to need him to be great in the first round if that's Colorado, right? But so I get it. It's a tough balance, though, for Scott Arniel and the Jets coaching staff, because you don't want to it's not that they're playing poorly. Like I said, I mean, they lose the other day. That came after a 3-game winning streak. So they're right there. They're playing probably the way they want. It's just that Dallas has been so good for a long stretch here now, a 9-game stretch where they've gotten points in every one of those games, and they've won 6 in a row, that you have to be looking over your shoulder a little bit and a little worried about it.
And, give the Dallas Stars a lot of credit, because Miro Heiskanen has been out now for a good while, right? Going back to late January, early February, he's been out of the lineup, and they have continued to play very well. And give, Casey DeSmith's another guy. We haven't talked about him at all. As a backup goalie there, he has stepped in and played very well when called upon. So the Stars have it going right now. It's going to be very interesting to see down the stretch if they can catch him.
Yeah, they did. And they just went on the road for 4 in a row. They were in Seattle for a bunch of days, played 2 games there, and they won all those games there. And it was Edmonton, Calgary, and 2 in Seattle. They won those games. Listen, they're a dangerous team. I've thought this for a while here. It's not necessarily right now reflected, obviously, in my Super 16, but I think Winnipeg, of those 3 teams, is probably third. They would be third if, going into the playoffs. If you ask me who has the best chance to win the Stanley Cup of those 3 teams, I would probably say Winnipeg would be third out of those 3.
So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting chase over these last several days down the stretch of the season. And, you're staying in Washington. If you see a handsome young fellow with a Blues hat standing outside your hotel, that'll be our researcher, Kyle O'Sullivan. You might want to walk the other way.
Well,
you might want to go the other way.
They were number 6. This is not so bad. This was, okay, they've been
all
great.
Year, Dan. All year you've hated the Blues. Let's be honest.
I like them a lot better now. Let's put it that way. And I'll tell you what, Jordan Binnington, man, it's not great. His numbers aren't through the roof, but that swagger is back. It came back in the Four Nations face-off, and he's had it since then.
All right. Not bad this week, but still, you got some work to do. And be nicer to those good folks in St. Louis, the gateway to the West.
I'll do my best.
All right, coming up. Take a look at the Eastern Conference race and the Montreal Canadiens. They've been finding ways to win. They're in action again tonight. We'll talk Habs next on First Shift.
Super 16 is presented by Enterprise. We're here to keep you moving forward, whether it's around the corner or around the world. Official partner of the NHL.
Let's take a look at the Eastern Conference wild card standings. Those top 2 teams, they are in the playoffs as we speak today. See, the Senators look like they're in a pretty good spot there to hold on to that first wild card. And then the Montreal Canadiens, New York Rangers tied in points. Canadiens in the spot. They've played 1 fewer game than the New York Rangers. If the Rangers are tied with the Canadiens at the end of the year, the Rangers have a big tiebreak advantage over every other team around them. So if their Rangers are in a tie for that spot at the end of the year, they will likely get it. You can see the Canadiens hanging on. And the Jackets, who have a couple of games in hand on the Rangers, they have 9 to go. Canadiens 8, Rangers 7, and the Jackets in action tonight too. But let's talk about the Montreal Canadiens. They're taking on the Bruins tonight. They're a hated rival. And the shoes are kind of on the other foot for the first time in a while because the Bruins have been good for so long. This year kind of didn't go their way. Into a retooling situation right now, really struggling of late. Travel to Montreal. The Canadiens on the ultimate high after what they did to the Florida Panthers over the weekend, really, to win on Sunday afternoon in Florida, then to sweep the season series, winning all 4. And in the fashion they did, Dan, the Bell Center must have been going nuts on Tuesday night.
It looked insane.
That's
insane.
The Bell
and that's what
Center,
you love to see.
The Bell Center, when you have that kind of passion, I don't know if there's any place you want to be other than that for a hockey game. It was crazy. And now tonight, the Bruins, they got to keep it going, right? Like, they can't sit on their laurels. They have to find a way to beat a Bruins team that has been very beatable lately.
Well, yeah. Listen, the hot dogs shook in the Bell Center the other night. How about that? The Bruins are limping to the finish line. This has to be a win for the Montreal Canadiens if you want to get in the playoffs. You can't lose this game. The Rangers are sitting there. They got the tiebreaker, as you mentioned. They've won their last couple of games, and they're off now until Saturday. The Blue Jackets, to me, they've got the games in hand, but you got to win those games in hand, and that's a key thing. And they haven't been the same team since they've won in the Stadium Series. They've been hanging around, so that's good. But this is Montreal. Montreal's got to get that win tonight. They'll equal the Rangers in games, but you want to take the lead in points. So this is a must-win, if you ask me, for the Canadiens. Got to build on what they did and what Nick Suzuki did for you against the Florida Panthers.
And both the Canadiens and Blue Jackets are playing the first of 3 and 4 days, so the schedule gets a little bit dicey for both of those teams. Well, listen, enjoy your time in D.C. covering the Hobey Chase. Again, NHL Now starts from Washington tomorrow at 5 o'clock. We'll have the game tomorrow night. NHL Now coming up next. Dan, have a lovely evening.
You too, Each. Thank you very much.